Um, so if you look really closely at the tranquil surface of a backyard garden pond, that whole illusion of peace just completely shatters.
Oh, absolutely. It's totally, completely shattered.
Right, because you expect, like, blooming flowers, a gentle breeze, maybe some water lilies reflecting the clouds.
Yeah, like a perfectly curated sanctuary.
Exactly. But beneath that surface, you are actually looking at a ruthless, high-stakes battle for survival, and it's playing out right next to the patio furniture.
It is a miniature arena. We build these outdoor setups and tell ourselves we're creating a slice of nature, but we often really underestimate the sheer brutality of the ecological forces we're, inviting into our backyards.
Yeah, and today we are taking you right into the heart of that hidden conflict. For this deep dive, we are pulling from this really fascinating piece of source material. It's a specific journal entry from a highly dedicated aquarist named Ang.
Right, the one titled Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 316.
Yes, Part 316, Managing Multi-Generational Cichlid Fry. Over 300 entries of meticulous observation, which is just wild to me.
It really is an incredible dedication to the craft.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to explore the delicate, sometimes brutal dynamics of managing a miniature ecosystem through Ang's eyes.
Reading the notes of someone who has, observed a single closed environment that closely for that long, it's a rare opportunity.
It really changes your perspective.
Exactly. You stop looking at the pond as just a collection of pets, right? And you start seeing it as this complex matrix of biological triggers and, well, behavioral paradoxes.
Okay, let's unpack this. So here is the current situation Ang is facing. In this outdoor pond setup, there is a surviving pair of zebra-cichlids,
Right.
and they have just spawned a brand new batch of fry.
Hmm.
So these microscopic, incredibly vulnerable newborns are currently roaming the bottom of this pond.
Swimming right in the danger zone.
Yes, because they aren't alone. They are sharing the space with a previous batch of juvenile fish. So they're older siblings, basically, that have already grown significantly larger.
Which, forces the caretaker into a really uncomfortable position.
Oh, definitely.
Aang is suddenly staring at a multi-generational habitat and has to weigh like the heavy hand of human intervention against simply stepping back.
Just letting nature take its course.
Right, letting a violent natural equilibrium take over.
And knowing those new fry are swimming right in the hunting grounds of their older siblings is, I mean, it's stressful just to read about.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But before we even look at the consequences of the new fry, the immediate puzzle, Aang highlights isn't the older siblings yet. It's the environment itself.
Yeah, the environmental triggers are so key here.
Because Aang notes this new spawning behavior, but immediately questions the cause. Like Aang writes that it could be due to a recent heat wave or maybe just seasonal behavior.
Right, it's a mystery.
So Aang, despite being the ultimate architect of this pond, doesn't actually know for sure what flipped the switch.
What's fascinating here is that uncertainty really gets to the core vulnerability of captive outdoor ecosystems.
How so?
Well, an indoor aquarium is essentially a sterile bubble, right? You dictate the photo period with timed lights.
Right, you lock the temperature with heaters.
Exactly. Heaters, chillers, whatever you need. But outside, the pond is entirely at the mercy of macroscopic weather patterns.
So a sudden heat wave does a lot more than just make the water a bit warmer.
Oh, absolutely. It fundamentally alters the physical and chemical reality of that environment.
It's like the environment operates as this incredibly sensitive biological clock. I mean, for you and me, a heat wave just means we turn on the AC, right?
Yeah, maybe feel a bit sluggish.
Right. But how does a minor environmental shift, like just a few degrees of heat, translate into a sudden biological imperative for these cichlids to reproduce?
Well, it comes down to the inverse relationship between water temperature and gas solubility.
Okay, inverse relationship. Break that down for me.
So as the water in that pond heats up, its molecules move faster, and dissolved oxygen actually begins to physically escape into the air.
Wait, really? So there's just suddenly less oxygen available in the water?
Exactly. And simultaneously, the heat causes the cold-blooded cichlids' metabolic rates to spike. Oh, wow. So they are burning energy faster.
Yes, they're burning energy faster and requiring more oxygen precisely when the water holds less of it.
So they are effectively suffocating and starving at a microscopic level all at once.
I mean, suffocating might be a bit dramatic, but they are absolutely experiencing acute physiological stress.
And that triggers something in them.
Right. In the wild habitats where these cichlids evolved, a rapid spike in temperature and a drop in water quality usually signal a transitional sequence.
like the end of a dry spell or something.
Exactly, like just before a massive rainy season, or maybe a massive shift in food availability. So this physiological stress mimics those ancient environmental cues.
It flips an evolutionary switch. Like a biological alarm bell goes off telling their bodies, conditions are shifting dramatically. The time to pass on our genes is right now before things get worse.
Precisely. And that is exactly why Aang is left guessing. You can buy the fish, you can dig the pond, you can balance the pH.
But you cannot control the atmospheric pressure or the summer sun. You really can't. The caretaker is just a passenger on a biological journey dictated by the weather.
And unfortunately for Aang, that biological journey just dropped a whole new generation of life into a very, very dangerous neighborhood.
Yeah, it's not a great setup for the newborns.
Not at all. Which brings us to the immediate pressing danger these changes created, right? The dark twist of this aquatic family dynamic. These newly hatched fry are at severe risk of turning into a literal snack for the larger, older juvenile zebra-cichlids.
Because in a confined aquatic environment, the biological imperative for a growing juvenile fish is incredibly straightforward. It's opportunistic feeding.
So familial bonds just simply do not extend across generational batches.
No, not at all. An older sibling doesn't recognize a younger sibling. It recognizes a protein source that happens to fit inside its mouth.
That is so brutal. But Aang's journal provides a detail here that we really need to dissect, I think.
Oh, the relocation effort.
Yes. Aang mentions that they didn't manage to relocate all of the older juvenile fish previously. Like some were netted and moved out, but a few were left behind in the pond.
Right, which leaves the door open for disaster.
Exactly. And playing the sympathetic but slightly critical observer here, wait, if you know the older kids are going to eat the babies, why weren't they all moved? If you start the relocation job, why not finish it to ensure the newborns are safe?
I know, it is very easy to look at a half-finished job and cry foul from the dry comfort of our homes, right?
Enough.
But we have to factor in the sheer physical and biochemical reality of what netting fish in a planted pond actually entails.
It's not just scooping them out of a clear bowl.
Not at all. An outdoor pond is not a glass box where you have clear sight lines. It has shadows, it has varying depths.
Algae, rocks, plant roots everywhere.
Exactly, this complex geometry. And on top of that, the fish possess a sensory system entirely designed to evade capture.
Right, they're lateral lines.
Yes, they can detect the microscopic changes in water pressure long before a net even comes close to them.
So catching every single darting, camouflaged juvenile is just an exercise in diminishing returns.
And more importantly, the act of hunting them with a net causes immense biochemical damage to the entire ecosystem.
You mean like the stress of the chase itself?
Think about the cortisol release. When a caretaker churns the water, tearing up plants and chasing fish for hours, the stress hormones in those animals just skyrocket.
Lactic acid builds up in their muscles.
Their immune systems temporarily shut down. At a certain point, Aang had to make a calculus.
Does the trauma of tearing apart this pond outweigh the benefit of removing every last juvenile?
Exactly. Risking the health of the adult breeding pair just isn't worth it sometimes.
So Aang probably scooped out as many as possible until the collateral damage got too high and just had to hope it was enough.
But the cascading effects of that necessary compromise are huge.
It's an ecological butterfly effect. Because a few older siblings managed to evade the net weeks ago, a complete life-or-death crisis has emerged today.
The threat of cannibalism isn't just a possibility anymore. It's a constant roaming reality in the water.
Aang's effort to control a population hit the hard wall of nature's evasiveness. The threat was mitigated, but definitely not eliminated.
No, the danger is still very much there.
Okay, so since the older siblings are essentially a lethal threat, the logical next step is to look at the natural defense system, which in the cichlid world is supposed to be the parents.
Right. Cichlids are famous for their fierce parental care and territorial defense. They don't just scatter their eggs and leave them to fate.
They're supposed to be active, aggressive protectors of their fry.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Aang observes that during the relocation process, both parents completely abandoned the fry.
Yes, which is shocking.
It really is. They left the microscopic newborns fully exposed on the pond floor, swam away, and hid inside an artificial cave.
A total collapse of their evolved defense mechanism right at the moment the fry were most vulnerable.
For you listening, try to map this onto an overwhelming natural disaster. Imagine a human parent in a grocery store when the fire alarm goes off.
Right, a terrifying situation.
And instead of grabbing their toddler in the aisle, the sheer terror of the event short-circuits their brain and they just flee the building alone. Is this just objectively bad parenting by these specific fish? Or is something else happening here?
Well, we have to draw a hard line between evolved natural pond threats and massive unnatural interventions.
Okay, what's the difference to the fish?
Over millions of years, zebra-cichlids have developed highly specific fixed action patterns to deal with biological predators.
So if a larger fish or bird approaches the fry,
The parent's instinct triggers seamlessly. They puff up their gills, flare their fins, and aggressively ram the intruder.
that is a threat they possess the neurological vocabulary to comprehend.
Yeah,
It operates within their understood physical reality.
exactly. But an intervention, a relocation process, is a completely different stimulus. A massive shadow blocks out the sun.
The water pressure shifts violently across the entire pond.
A giant, inescapable net descends. To a fish, this isn't a predator. It is an incomprehensible cataclysm.
Their sensory organs are just totally overwhelmed.
Right. The fixed action pattern for parental defense simply doesn't have a protocol for a Skynet tearing up the universe.
The sheer scale of the disruption overrides the specific maternal or paternal instinct.
It defaults to the most baseline reptilian survival response, which is flight.
So they aren't thinking, I must protect my fry from the Skynet.
No, their nervous system is screaming, hide or die. And what is so poignant about this journal entry is exactly where they retreat to.
The artificial cave. A man-made refuge in a man-made crisis.
It perfectly encapsulates the paradox of the caretaker. Aang's intervention, which is entirely meant to help the ecosystem.
To protect the fish.
Right, but it actively breaks down the natural evolved behaviors of the animals. By reaching into the pond to manage it, Aang accidentally strips the fry of their only natural defense line.
That is a profound tragedy of good intentions. I mean, Aang wants to create order, wants to save the baby fish from being eaten by their older siblings.
But the very act of trying to enforce that order terrifies the parents into abandoning their post.
It reveals how inherently disruptive our presence is.
Even when a caretaker acts with the best intentions, their intervention is an unnatural shock to the system. It's a very humbling realization for anyone managing wildlife or captive habitats.
Which brings us to the final crossroads for Aang. Knowing that intervention actively breaks down the parent's protective instincts, what is the next move?
Right, what do you do now?
Aang outlines two distinct options in the journal. Option A is a technical approach. Set up a fish trap.
The idea being to passively capture those remaining juvenile fish without having to aggressively net the pond and trigger that fear response again.
But Aang immediately hesitates, admitting to being unsure how to proceed with the trap.
Because a trap introduces its own complications. What if the parents get caught in it?
What if it disrupts the fry? It's just another layer of artificial management.
Exactly.
Which leads to option B, which is radical in its simplicity. Do nothing. Simply leave them all together. Just walk away.
Leave the parents, the new vulnerable fry, and the hungry older siblings all together in the pond.
So what does this all mean? For you listening, how does a caretaker decide when their help has crossed the line from necessary management into destructive meddling?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at the linguistic shift in Aang's own journal entry. It tracks a profound psychological evolution.
How so?
Early in the entry, the focus is heavily on action verbs. Aang is talking about managing, relocating, and finding ways to separate the generations.
Right, that classic mindset of a micromanager who feels this crushing burden of being the creator of this space.
Believing that every life or death outcome rests solely on their actions.
The idea that if you built the pond, you were entirely responsible for the behavior inside of it.
But by the end of the entry, after acknowledging the logistical failure of the net and watching the terrified parents abandon their fry for the artificial cave, Aang's tone softens completely.
The final thought isn't a new strategy or a better net.
No. Aang writes, I'm curious how many second-generation fry will survive with both batches of fish growing within the same environment.
That is massive pivot. Going from a highly stressed micromanager to a curious, almost detached observer, willing to let nature run its unforgiving course.
It is the moment Aang surrenders to the concept of carrying capacity. Aang is accepting that this outdoor pond is a living, breathing ecosystem that might actually know how to regulate itself better than a human with a net.
Even if that regulation involves cannibalism.
Especially then. Ecologically speaking, the older juveniles acting as predators might be the exact mechanism the pond needs.
Because the heat wave caused a population boom.
Right. If all those new fry survived, they would quickly consume all the available resources.
The water chemistry would crash from their combined bioload, and everything in the pond would die.
The older siblings provide a brutal but necessary biological check on that boom.
So the system is finding its own violent equilibrium. Yes, many of the fry will become snacks, but the ones that survive will be the most evasive.
The smartest and the genetically strongest of the batch.
And maybe, if Aang keeps the giant net out of the water, the parents will actually feel secure enough to engage their natural defense instincts.
And protect those strongest few. It's an exercise in letting go of control, which is the hardest lesson for any caretaker to learn.
It really is, a tiny, watery reflection of macro-level biology playing out right next to the patio. Let's summarize what we've unpacked for you today.
Sounds good.
A single journal entry, part 316 about zebra-cichlids, has revealed an incredible amount about the fundamental unpredictability of environments. We explored how something as simple as a heat wave alters water chemistry, oxygen levels, and metabolic rates.
Triggering an evolutionary imperative for new life.
Exactly. We dissected the severe logistical limits of human intervention, highlighting how the biochemical reality of catching fish meant a few were left behind.
Creating a continuous roaming threat for the next generation.
We analyzed the heartbreaking collapse of parental instinct, where an overwhelming, unnatural human interference short-circuited the cichlids' natural defenses and terrified them into abandoning their young.
And finally, we tracked Aang's beautiful, difficult evolution from trying to control every variable to surrendering to the natural carrying capacity of the ecosystem.
It is a remarkable amount of insight extracted from a few paragraphs about backyard fish. But before we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a completely different angle to mull over.
I love when we scale these things up. Think about the artificial caves in your own life, or even on a macro level, specifically in global conservation efforts.
Oh, like when we try to manage wild populations.
Exactly. When human conservationists intervene to save endangered species in the wild, whether it's tranquilizing and relocating wolves, flying helicopters over herds to tag rhinos, or aggressively managing breeding grounds, we tell ourselves we are managing the environment to protect them.
But how often is our giant, overwhelming, unnatural intervention actually short-circuiting and breaking down the very natural behaviors and instincts we are desperately trying to preserve?
Are we accidentally building artificial caves for the species we're trying to save? When an overwhelming, seemingly unnatural disruption enters our environment, do we, like the cichlids, abandon our usual protective responsibilities just to find a safe place to hide?
That completely reframes how we look at intervention at every level. It really challenges you to question the line between saving an ecosystem and destroying the natural instincts that sustain it. Food for thought as you look at the natural world around you this week.
Definitely something to think about.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. There is always something massive to learn from the smallest of ecosystems. Catch you next time.